The story of a friend. The husband will go to the one who makes coffee. This story is about my own sister Elena, who is 5 years older than me. When Elena was 16 years old, she moved to live in another city, which was 500 km from our house. My sister was morally crushed by our provincial town in Siberia. She dreamed of living in a large and noisy metropolis. Elena planned to connect her life with the economy, but it was almost impossible to enter a budgetary place in her specialty. There were too many applicants, mainly graduates of the school at this university. Therefore, from the 10th to the 11th grade, Elena studied at this school. She is a stubborn person. If something gets into her head, then she will receive it 100%. Therefore, the parents did not even doubt that she would enter and study for free. At the end of the first year, Elena shocked everyone with the news. Yura offered me to marry. I agreed. In August I have a wedding. Mom was hysterical. Wedding? Yes, what kind of wedding? She is only 18 years old. And what does Yura think? He himself just turned 18 the other day. They have been dating for only 1.5 years. She's pregnant. She's definitely pregnant. Mom was sure that Elena got pregnant, and that is why the young people decided to get married so quickly. The next morning, my mother took a train ticket and went to her sister to clarify the situation. On the eve of her trip, my mother called her friend, told her about her grief and asked to stay with her. The woman just lived near the university where her sister studied. A friend suggested that she go to a local fortune teller. Many of us go. Yaroslavna has not advised anyone bad yet. Take a photo of your daughter with a friend. She will immediately say whether her daughter is pregnant or not, and she will tell everything about the future. Dad asked Mom not to do this. Mom did not listen to her father, and before leaving she put a photo of her sister with her boyfriend in a travel bag. At the time, there were no cell phones in our family, so the wait seemed like an eternity to me. Mom returned 3 days later. Dad went to meet her at the station late in the evening. And now, finally, the parents came home. I quickly ran to open the door. Mom went into the apartment. It was noticeable that she was very tired from the road and was upset about something. I hugged my mother, helped her to undress and began to ask about her trip. The sister, of course, denied her pregnancy, and then my mother decided to go to Yaroslavna. The fortune teller confirmed, there is no child, they will not have common children at all. They will get married, live, but he will leave her for the one who makes coffee. It turns out that Elena will not be happy with him under any circumstances. At the end of their story there will be treason, deception and divorce. My dad is always restrained and silent, but then he could not stand it, shouted at my mother and asked not to tell Elena anything under any circumstances. He even threatened to divorce. That summer, my sister married Yura. As it turned out later, his mother pushed Yura to marry. Yura's parents worked in the oil industry and lived in the north of our country. A few months before the wedding, they bought the young man an apartment. Yura was going to move to an apartment in the fall and wanted to invite Elena to live together. But Yura's mother was against cohabitation before marriage. If you want to live with Elena, then marry her. Without thinking twice, the young man proposed to Elena. Mom treated her sister very well. She believed that Elena had a very positive effect on her son, so she approved of the wedding. The hardest thing in this situation was my mother. She was very worried about her sister. But all her fears were in vain. The father even began to joke. To the one who brews coffee, she, who works in the coffee shop on tap. So the son-in-law does not like coffee. I was staying with them. I asked him, maybe for some coffee? And he told me, I will not refuse tea, but I do not like coffee. 4 years after the wedding of Yura and Elena, I graduated from school and also decided to enter the higher educational institution in which they studied. To enter the budget, I chose an unclaimed faculty with the lowest passing score. For several months I lived with my sister and her husband. They had an excellent relationship, but it seemed to me that my sister sometimes strongly guided her husband, turning him into a henpecked one. Yura opened his own company selling computer equipment and began to earn very good money. My sister got a job at a bank. In the fall, my parents took out a loan and bought a one-room apartment in a remote area, and I moved in from my sister. I began to live my life. My sister was also constantly busy, so I rarely saw each other, often talked on the phone. About 2 years later, on a day off at 1 a.m. my mother called me and told me to urgently go to my sister. I tried to call my sister, but she did not answer the phone. I took the spare keys to their apartment, called a taxi and drove to them. Yura came home drunk. Elena made a scandal because he had not answered her phone calls since lunch. And he said that he was fed up with such a life. He had a different one for a long time and he was leaving. Mom was afraid for her sister, because when Elena called her, she screamed heartrendingly, "I don't want to live." When I arrived at her home, Yura was gone, and Elena took several sedative tablets. I had to move in with my sister. My parents were afraid for her life. Apart from me, Elena had no one left. All her friends sided with her husband. We once walked and met an ex-girlfriend, whose husband is friends with Yura. Elena asked, "You so calmly accepted this rubbish that destroyed my marriage as friends." "How so?" "We were like friends." She said, "Elena, Kirill is friends with Yura. I cannot help but accept her in my house." The divorce was very painful. The apartment in which the sister lived belonged to Yura and was bought before marriage. The man first said that she could live there as long as she wanted, and then wrote to her to leave in a month. Yura's mother, who once adored Elena so much, suddenly announced that in this apartment her sister only owned a sewing machine. The rest was bought with their money and with Yura's money. After long litigation, Yura paid his sister 2 million rubles for the divorce. His sister took out a loan and bought herself an apartment. I never asked my sister who her husband had gone to. I tried not to raise this topic once again. My sister was depressed for a long time. About 6 months after the divorce, we sat in a cafe. Elena sighed and said, "In a month we would have a wedding anniversary, and do you know to whom he left me?" I shook my head. "He left me for his secretary." Goosebumps ran through my body. He left her to the one who makes coffee. If you liked this story, then like it and subscribe to the channel. There is still a lot of interesting things ahead.